Howdy folks, James at Rexem, rexem.com.au. Rexem is what we do. Welcome to another video podcast. We are going to answer the question if GRT can be used as a predictive tool for good groups. So we're going to do a part one and explain what we're doing, then go out to the range and check it and test it, and then we're going to come back and have a look at the data and see if GRT can indeed help predict with limited information that we can give it, whether or not it's a good predictive tool. So I'm excited for this because I'm doing it real time. I haven't, gone and fudged the data so we can get a result to say yes or no. I am literally doing this video, then going out to the range and then coming back and we're going to analyze it together. Groups, targets, everything. So stay tuned. It should be a great video. I'm looking forward to it. We're all learning together, so let's do it. All right, a couple of quick things, guys. The new website is up and running. It is taking your payments. It is trading well. It takes PayPal, Tyro, PayID, payment links, bank deposits, all of that stuff. We are back up, but we lost all of our SEO when we moved to the new provider. So we need you guys out there, linking us to stuff on Facebook and to Google and whatever and forums. Plus, we lost all of our reviews. We had a 4.965 out of 5-star rating. I'm trying to get organized to copy and paste a bunch of stuff, but if you guys have a minute to just get on there and copy and paste your old review, that would be super handy. Save me a bucket of time, and I'd really appreciate it. And we had hundreds of reviews, which was excellent. So with that being said, there's a couple of new developments which are pretty exciting. One is in the 6.5. We're just waiting on a final bit of tooling from some tests we did to basically make a Gen, I guess you could call it the Gen 3. It's the final iteration of that jacket length, that bullet in the 135. Really excited about it. It's really meeting all of our expectations, and that will be released very, very soon. That's why it's on pause at the moment, but we'll probably put out a end of run for the Gen 2 pretty shortly. So the 135 will stay like this from now on because it's awesome. All right, cool. So let's get into GRT 223 Ackley development. Let's have a look at some numbers and let's have a look at what we did to try and get GRT as a predictive tool to help the next load development. And we're going to test it when we're finished with it. So let's go. All right, a couple of quick things before we get started. This is not load advice. It is not load data. Reloading safety is 100% your responsibility and the safety of others around you. So reload safely, know your limits, know your equipment. All responsibility is on you to do this safely. Okay, this is just our gun, what we're doing with our particular chamber and our particular projectile. Your safety is your responsibility, always has been, and just be safe. Okay, guys, be responsible. All right, so for this to work, I need a proper hypothesis. So I actually took the time to write one down, and this is it. Gordon's reloading tool, GRT, when collaborated with chronograph-derived velocity data from initial loads, accurately predicts velocity nodes, stable charge weight plateaus within plus or minus 5% velocity variation, and accuracy nodes, optimal charge weights yielding sub-MOA group sizes for subsequent load development in the same cartridge-bullet-powder system. So, all in all, what that means is, can GRT actually predict what a group or ESSD is going to look like based on your initial load development, your load ladder, so to speak? So let's dive into it. Let's go to the range and we'll figure it out. And I'm going to start from the beginning. Okay, let's do this. Okay, so due to the nature of the beast, the brass has been fireformed once. It's not fully fireformed when we did this initial test. So we had some fairly wild ES and SD anyway, but it's part of the experiment, right? So we have to just work with what we have. So GRT at the moment is set up with the right case volume, the cartridge overall length. So that is based on a base to ogive of 2.0 inches, bang on. Our throat is a bit longer than the SAMI standard for 223 Ackley, which has a very short throat. We wanted it stepped out a bit more so we could utilize a good powder capacity and step that bullet out a bit further, so the throat was chased a little bit. So it's not a standard 223 Ackley, it's been machined out a little bit more on the throat. So with those things in mind, this is currently basically devoid of data. We went out with a chronograph and shot a few loads from 24.6 up to 26 grains, and I've put in here some measurements from 25.2 and 25.0. The reason I focused on those is because they shot good groups. However, the ES and SD was not great, okay? And I put that down a lot to the brass still fire forming out, right? It is what it is. However, the groups were really good. So the 24.6, 24.8, and 20 were not great. The 25.0 group was really good. The 25.2 group was really, really good. The 25.46, it just started to open up a little bit, and then we got back open again at 26 grains. So before we go any further at 26 grains, I think I was getting to overpressure situation, okay? So I backed off and sort of let that go. Now, where to from here to work out if GRT is potentially going to help us? And I found this really interesting. There is a fair bit in this. It's quite difficult to explain, but I will go back over after we do the targets and stuff and try to concisely tell you what I think. Right. So we are going to do an OBT at 25.2 grains, just to start out with the data that we put in from our chronograph from the day. It was just a 3-shot chronograph reading, and you can see our SDs are pretty high. This was the second SD. The initial one was out a little bit, so we're going to run with 25.2. I can't remember what that old data was. My bad, but it is what it is. So let's run 25.2. Let's run the OBT, and this requires you to put in accurate data, okay? Otherwise we're going to get nowhere. So the current OBT is done its calculation, and if I hit compute node adjustment at 25.2 with that data, it says right there that 25 grains should be about optimal, right? Interesting. So let's create a GRT copy file that we can mess with, and let's just change our values here so we can see what's going on. Let's go in 0.2s, and let's actually go to 26 because we want to see what's going on here. All right, so with 25.2 and at the velocities that were given, it's already telling me now that 26 grains was overpressure by a little bit. Not stupid, but enough. So 25.2, right. At 2.44 inch combined overall length, we are underneath, our bullet lead time is underneath our optimal barrel time. 25.0 is pretty much right on our optimal barrel time. So that's why it said, hey, 25 grains is probably your optimum charge weight. So now what I've done is I've loaded up 50 rounds at 25.0 and 50 rounds at 25.2 to play with seating depth and see what happens. And then I will come back and we will input this data into GRT again and see what we learned. So let's go to the range, and we'll discuss further a bit later. I'll talk you through the video here. All right, so we're out at the range, and rather than go through the whole thing, I'll just talk you through what's going on here. So the first 2 shots were 25.2, just to clear the barrel, warm it up. The ES and SD on those 2 shots were terrible, but they pretty close. So now we're going to move to 25.0 at a combined overall length of 2.44 inches, which is a base to ogive of 2.0000, right? And see what happens. And the first group, and you know, I'm still warming up a little bit, but it prints about an inch. Okay, ES and SD won't flash, but you know, then we'll go over and we'll move it in 3 thou. And let's have a look at what happens here. So all I did was move the seating depth in 3 thou, and boom, right, fantastic group. but my ES and SD were still wanting. Now, I just want to point out before we go any further, I have this little setup here where I'm learning to just preload. I watched Mark and Sam after work, and they're talking about preloading the bipod on a thing. So I got some rubber mats there that I'm pushing against. I'm not a professional shooter, okay? So I do try to take my own personal skill out of some of the data I'm trying to capture, so it's a bit more realistic. And then the second group, first shot, and you're not going to hear me carry on about it, but I pulled that one. My bipod legs weren't flush, I think, with the front, and when I pulled the trigger, the whole thing moved, and that was definitely me. So I exclude that from the group because this is about the science of nodes, accuracy, and powder nodes and seating depth. So if I know that I've done something, I just exclude it. So the second shot, as you can see, pretty much same hole. And then the third shot, again, I wasn't really all that comfortable, but it's still tidy, right? So I'm going to call that a pretty good accuracy node. And then we move in 3 thou again, and we get another group that looks like this, which when I put this group, a group that potentially could have been a lot better, and a group like this together, that's pretty much as good as I can shoot. The gun is doing what I'm asking it to, and I'm really, really happy. What was really interesting in this group series is that the SDs on these loads weren't great, but then all of a sudden, at 2.431 combined overall length, theoretically, this SD jumped down into the 6s, okay? I should have kept going, and I didn't. And I'm kicking myself now because that's going to be another experiment that I have to run, is then to keep moving this node. But as you can see, once we moved down a little bit, these things really started to do what they're supposed to do. Now, I will explain why this is really interesting later, because the OBT from the first data we captured when the cases were still expanding, when I re-OBT it later, I was actually sitting quite high above the node. So, but I can move to it with seating depth and bring it in. And that's something I'll chat to in a bit, in the next, well, shortly anyway. Right, next video. So this is the 25.2 node, and the reason this is so interesting, and ignore all the writing, this is just an old target that I wanted to use, is because theoretically in this node, it will never shoot well. And we'll go into why. Okay, so the best this node was going to shoot was at 2.44 inches when we have a look at the data later, and it correlates to what we see on paper. So the first 5-shot group, because the chronograph missed the first 2, so I shot another 3, was awesome. Okay, that's good for me. Okay, so first 5-shot group, 2.44 inches, 25.2 grains, great group, terrible SD. Right. Then as we move through, another 3 thou, we get this weird triangle, and then, you know, double grouping thing here. Then we get a horizontal string, then another sort of horizontal triangle, then another horizontal triangle, vertical triangle. Then we get some wild stuff, and I was like, oh, maybe I can keep shooting, but no, it just sort of did something weird. And then I did this 3-shot vertical group, and it came in another 3 thou. Got some wild results here, and then I had 5 left, and I just went bang, 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 back at the original group size. And we're like, okay, so this settled in a bit there. So we're looking good. So this kind of group here is printing very close to this group again. Maybe some wind was blowing then that pushed it a bit more to the right or whatever, but you know, we've got 3 shots back in there where it should be, and the barrel's also getting quite hot at this stage. So the takeaway from this video and this video, I'll just pause that again, bring this up. What do you notice? So I noticed that 25.0, it wants to shoot. It just wants to shoot. Like it's fine. The 25.2 group does not want to shoot. It will shoot at 2.44 And doesn't matter how far I jump, it's never going to come in before we hit overpressure. And I'm going to prove that to you now. So at 25.2, we are underneath the node. And being underneath the node, no matter how far I come in, so 2.4, so take off 40 thou, I'm still in node 4.5, nowhere near it. If you have a look here, and if I went 2.35, we've jumped into the next node, but look at what's happening to our pressure here. It's building up quickly, right? We're almost at the end of our tether from pressure 2.34. And we are very close, so 2.333, let's say. We're in overpressure and still not quite there, 2.330. Still not quite there, 2.323. Okay, we're on, but we're overpressure. Not a good load choice. Very interesting. We'd have to jump a really, really long way, shift nodes, and then overpressure our equipment to get to this node at 25.2. Looks like it's never going to happen. But if we go back to 2.44 and we look at 25, we are basically starting on that node, right? We're very, very close. But as you saw, as we came in, things got better. So this is a little bit out, just a little bit. So how can we fix that? Let's take our 25 grain at 2.44 inches, and let's go back and let's OBT this again with our new data. Calculate node charge adjustment. It's nearly 25.1. Okay, cool. Calculate GRT with new values. We'll copy with new values. Now let's go 26. Let's go 8 things. Let's go 0.1s. And we'll go 25.4 actually, so we can catch most of this. We'll go to 10. Sorry, I'm getting a bit clicky. Yeah, right. Cool. So now let's look at 25. Haha! Interesting. Now, with the data that we collected on the day, with brass that's had another firing and stuff and is settling in a bit, we are looking at a bullet lead time of 1.584 with an optimal barrel time of 1.533. And if we go to 25.1, we're slightly under, but we're really close. So that's why it's saying 25.07 would land us right here. But if we say 25 and we go 2.437, we're getting closer. Let's come in another few thou, 434, sorry. Getting closer, 2.431. So we went 369. This is the one that shot the best ES and SD, and then I stopped. And I wish I hadn't. I reckon that if we'd kept going, we would be in a situation where let's just undo that, sorry. Reach over my microphone here. 2.427. Getting closer. I reckon 2.424 maybe. Ooh, too much. 2.425. Haha. So, what does this tell us? Based on what we shot the groups, we are now, with the pressure that we've OBT'd, we are now only at 50,000 PSI, running about 2920, which is great. And just that 0.2 grain makes a huge difference when we're just trying to slide into that node. So we have two options available to us according to GRT. Number one, we run 25 grains and we step down, because the closer we got to that bullet lead time on paper and on the SDs got better. It never happened on the 25.2 grain load. So our next test is going to be running out at 25.0 and stepping down, and then running a 2.44 inch groove, 2.44 again at 25.1 and seeing what happens, or 25.07 if I can pull it off with my super trickler, which we should try. So we'll try that, okay? But does it correlate? In your opinion, does this causation correlation seem to hold true? Now, if you were to ask me based on purely those two targets and that small sample size and what was going on, I would say yes. I would say it indeed does. If we were to OBT 25.2 again, based on measurements that we got on the day, which I haven't done yet, I would say that it's not going to move out of that node, right? It's never going to shoot well. So what do we do with this information? How do we test this theory? How do we use GRT to basically save us a bunch of time? I think there's a few steps, and I'll put them up here. So number one, you need to go and shoot with a chronograph 3 to 5 shot groups in a powder ladder. Get the best, ideally with fired brass already that you've resized. Get the best speed or velocity data you can get. Put it into GRT, run your optimal barrel time solver, and do it from somewhere just back it off from max charge. Okay, velocity is not everything, right? The difference between max and minimum here in terms of velocity isn't much. So back it off, and then look at your optimal barrel time and your bullet lead time, and try to keep your bullet lead time slightly higher than your optimal barrel time when you're stepped out right next to the lands. As you back off, the bullet lead time will fall and it will come into line with your optimal barrel time. And that should give you the best ES and SD and groups without pressure based on what I'm seeing at the moment. Now, there's one way that we're going to find out if this actually is true. Now, part of this, and I need to also say here, guys, a part of this is understanding our bullets too and their behavior. What we're seeing quite regularly is you've got like a really accurate small node, and then it'll sort of step out of it, but then you get this 9 to 12 thou really wide accuracy node. And it's usually sort of up in the higher end of pressure, and it's usually between 10 and 20 thou off the lands. Generally seems to be where these things want to shoot. Maybe 5. Some people shooting at 5 thou off the lands and getting great results, but don't be afraid to step back off it. We know that accuracy doesn't correlate directly with being like a thou or 2 off the lands. Like it just doesn't work like that. So, and the pressure does matter. Where you're sitting in your optimal barrel time clearly matters to accuracy in good groups. I don't think we can argue anymore that it doesn't. This tool, I think, is going to really, really help. So moving forward, what I'm going to do is once I get chrono data for anything, I'm going to find a powder load. Once I OBT it, I'm going to look at what it recommends, look at where that recommendation puts me in terms of pressure, and then try to keep this slightly above, and then start from there and work my projectile in. And I'm pretty sure if we do some more testing, because this hypothesis isn't proven or disproven yet, but it's looking like a correlation exists within GRT, that we can actually make this work. So what are my next tests? Right. Test number 1, shoot at 25 grains, come all the way in, look at, I think it was 2.432, was it? No, 2.426, I think it was. Yeah, 2.426. I'm going to go to the range with this load, right? Or maybe a couple of steps higher and step into it and see what happens. Otherwise, I'm going to run that SD of 6.7, that load. It's fine. It shoots great groups. It's a good spot. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is run 25.1 at 2.44 and see what that does, or 25.07 at 2.44, and see what it does. And we're just going to do a side by side. It might need to come in a little bit because the data isn't particularly set up for that particular charge, but it's going to give me some leeway to move in. So that's test number 1, is making up these 2 loads. Test number 2, an untested rifle that has only baseline data. So this is the Alpha brass with the 22 GT, Swan 26-inch barrel. It's an absolute beast. The measurement data was taken with 2208, CCI 450 primer. SD here was 3.6 at 34.2. Shot ridiculously good group, but and I shouldn't have to change it, but let's see what the OBT does. 2.3695 is my combined overall length. Let's run the OBT and see what it says. That's smoking fast for a 73, by the way. It's ridiculous. Compute node charge adjustment, 34.41 is its suggestion. Let's have a little look here. Close. Actually, one thing we didn't look at is our OBT here is slightly high, right? Our barrel lead time here is slightly higher than the optimal barrel time. Okay, interesting. As we go up, what happens to our optimal bullet lead time? It goes down, right? So we're stepping up into it. So now we've got 34.4. Okay, so let's go to 35 grains in 10 steps in 0.1s, which should cover everything. So we had 34.2, 34.3, 34.4. We're really, really close. What happens if I go, so that's 2.3695, 2.369, bit more, 2.368 maybe. No, a bit more, 2.367. Cool. I'm going to go to the range, doing nothing else. And I'm going to run 2.367 combined overall length. I'll measure what the base to ogive was because I want to measure off that, not combined overall length. And I want to run 34 grains of 2208 and just go and shoot it and see what happens. Hell of a test. That's going to be part 2 of this video. So listen, thank you for listening to my rambling. I think we might be onto something here. It means I can go to the range, shoot a couple of groups, not really caring too much about overall accuracy, but just getting the velocity data. And then I can come back, plug it in, work out what the gun I think likes and just sit slightly above it, just slightly, and then move it in as you just saw there with the 22 GT. Now the 22 GT I will be firing unfired brass. Okay, it's brand new, but I want to get through it so I can start reloading it. That may affect some of the ES and SD and extreme spread. I can live with that, but it should shoot great groups. We will see. All right, so this is part 1. I will see you in part 2 once we do another theory test and see if we can prove or disprove this hypothesis and the accuracy of this software. What do you guys think? I don't know. Was this just a whole waste of time for you, or do you think it's really interesting? Because I think this is going to save me a crap ton of time at the range if it works. I can just get my load data, come back, plug it in, then reload everything to it and just trust it'll do the right thing. That would be swell. If you don't think it's worthwhile or you have experience with it, get onto me below, because I'm doing this live with you, right? This isn't something that we've done and come back and say, hey, look, we were right. No, we could be wrong. But anyway, let us know your thoughts. All right, talk soon. Bye.